So, thank you so much for joining us on another episode of Teen Talks. We are at episode 5, powered by Inertia Teens, and today's episode is with, I can't believe this is happening, Jessica Salgado. Jessica Salgado is an LA based Salvadorian poet. I hope I'm pronouncing that right.
You are.
Who writes about her family, city, culture, and body positivity. She is two times National Poetry Slam finalist and the recipient of 2020 International Latino Book Award in Poetry. She has done some amazing work for body positivity and empowering her community. I'm so happy to have you here with us today, and I absolutely love your work. And even I am a spoken words poet, so I adore your poetry like so much. And you're such an inspiration to so many brown girls like me.
Thank you so much. Oh, that means so much to me. Because my last book, I dedicated it to all the brown girls of my city, Los Angeles. But I meant it for everybody beyond that. So it really touches my heart to know that it's doing what it needs to do. And thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yes. So moving on to our first question, which is related to your button poetry, spoken words, brown girl. And as you had
Mhm.
mentioned in it that you had learned everything on your own, and I think that's the case with most BIPOC teens, including myself. I had to take up the courage to learn and unlearn so many things, and finally be here in front of you today. So, what would be your advice to young girls who are commencing on their journey of becoming someone they really want to?
I think that the best thing that I wish I knew early on was patience, right? To and enjoy the process to becoming who you want to be. I always wanted to be a writer my whole life, and like you said, I taught myself, and that's what I mentioned in my poem Brown Girl. But I wish that somebody would have told me, like, it's gonna, when it happens and once you're doing your writing as a full-time, you're gonna miss when you were doing it just for you. And so enjoy the process of getting to where you want to get to, because that's the whole journey, that's the whole ride. And just have patience, and don't compare yourself to other people, because when you compare yourself to other people is when you stop enjoying what you're doing, because you're looking at what's not happening for you, and you can't appreciate things as they happen, and you kind of stop being grateful for them because you want more. And so don't compare yourself to other people, and be patient with yourself, and those and you'll it'll everything will fall into place.
I agree so much to that. I wish someone would have told me that last year. I really struggle to be like on the top because everyone, like, it is our dream to achieve something, and for that we put ourselves through a lot. And I think at times we need to realize that this is the whole journey, and when we reach to the top, we are going to miss the entire thing. And it's not the position that is the thing you want in life. Maybe it's the journey, and if you just miss on all of that, then it's you're going to regret that. I think
Absolutely.
so.
Like I'm at a place now where this is what I do for work, and I enjoy it, and I'm happy, and I'm not complaining. But I miss when I used to do it just because it was mine, and I didn't have to worry about having other people have to like it, because either they hired me to write it, or because they bought my book, and I want them to like it, you know. And before, if somebody liked it, it was like a surprise, and it was like, it was so much fun, and experimenting and figuring it out. And if you got something wrong, it was okay, because nobody like really like what took it that serious, because it wasn't your job yet. So
Yes, that makes sense. And there is this one line in Brown Girl which strikes me so close to home, which is, I think in English, but my tongue is dressed in Spanish. And I can relate to this on another level. My mother tongue is Hindi, and I learned English eventually in my life. And I feel that I could never fit in the Western standards of fluency in English. And there were so many times that I think I could not fit into them. And were there any times as a teenagers that you felt left out because of the same? And if so, what would be your tip to someone who is going through the same?
Yes, I as a young girl, woman, I used to really struggle with the fact that my family was in Spanish and the world was in English, right? And so I couldn't come home and talk about certain things because they didn't translate, and the other way around. And so I would always feel like I had to pick one or the other. I didn't think that I could exist in both at the same time. And especially because my dad was very strict about how, because we live in the United States, he thought English, well, it's true, English was very important for us to succeed and for us to do well in school. But he also wanted us to retain our Spanish because that helps a lot with also being bilingual, right? And so he would never let us mix up both languages. We call that Spanglish, when you switch back between two languages, English and Spanish. And he wouldn't let us do that. He said only one language at a time. So in my head, I was like, I can only live in one language at a time. But that's not true, because sometimes there's not a word for something in English or there's not a word for it in Spanish. And I can switch between them because language does that. But I would tell a young person to live in both languages at the same time, and to show folks that it could be a blend, and it could be celebrated, and that yeah, because as a young girl, I just felt that was it. And then I would be embarrassed when I couldn't pronounce things in English. And now I know that my Spanish and being bilingual and having two tongues in one mouth is my superpower.
Yes, I agree. It is a superpower and we should take it that way. And like you had said, that parents want their children to learn one language. And I have seen that in South Asian communities, which is that if a person speaks in English, their parents are very happy about it. And they do not want the child to learn Hindi or some other local language because they feel that they wouldn't be able to compete with the world, which is something I've really seen. And I think it is so important to be connected to our roots, yet grow and succeed, which you had mentioned. And that is something that not a lot of people in this world have done. So that is something which we should celebrate. And
yes, both of us.
Yes. So you are also an advocate for body positivity, which is so crucial in today's times where preteens and teens are exposed to so much content on social media, and these so-called Instagram models who present themselves in such a way that when someone sees them, it starts affecting their relationship with their bodies. And I remember you had mentioned it once in your TED Talks, I think, that culture is everything that correlates to food. And similarly, in my South Asian community, food is culture and food is the way of showing love. So sometimes in this whole, quagmire, families or communities start commenting on your body. And I think that is the thing, and teens don't see it as an issue. So what would you suggest to teenagers who are struggling through this, and what would be the first step towards loving yourself and being proud of everything in general, and connecting that connection, you can say, with social media and everything else affecting your relationship with your body?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing to understand is that we're mirrors. We're all mirrors, and we're all looking for we're looking for a reflection in each other, right? We're searching to see some of ourselves around, like with our eyes or with our ears, and just looking to connect. And so it ends up happening that when we're on social media, and if we happen to follow a lot of people that don't reflect what we want to see back to us, we tend to absorb that and make ourselves the problem, not what we're seeing. And so my dog is very happy. I think the mail is here. But one of the things is that we can do, and it's a step, is setting up mirrors that reflect you back to yourself. I used to have a really hard time loving my body. I'm a fat woman, and I used to think that fat women didn't deserve love or relationships. And and I had felt like that since I was a teenage girl when I was in grade school. And but it was because back then we didn't have social media. I'm old, but what we would see on TV or in ads were thin people, only thin people. You never saw anybody even a little bit fuller or thicker or anything like that. So I didn't see myself in the world. I didn't see myself falling in love, myself having careers, because there was nobody visibly doing that. But now on social media, you get to control who you follow. And I remember that when I was starting to figure out how to love this body and love myself, it was when Tumblr was very big. And I followed a lot of fashion people that would dress, with really beautiful outfits that I never thought somebody my size could find or wear, or I never even dreamt of that, and so I started following more and more fat women and femmes and queer folks, and then I started following more different woman body types from very fat to even thinner, but like different, and so I started filling up my world with all of these different possibilities. And so then I started seeing myself in the world, and therefore I wasn't the problem anymore. Now the problem was the people that didn't want a world that was this diverse. And that would be one of my first suggestions to anybody, is surround yourself around people that celebrate beauty in all of its shapes and forms, and everybody has the capacity to feel and be beautiful. It's not just what media tells us or what advertisement tells us. Those are antiquated and they don't matter anymore. We get to control that, and I think that that's the really, really cool, powerful part of all of that.
Yes, I definitely agree. And social media is such a boon if we take it in such a way. And that is a great advantage for us as teenagers. We can control what we want to see, and we can create what we want to present. And
yes,
and that is such a great thing. And I think teenagers already start to understand their body before it happens. So it is like they see the change before it's happening. So I think that is such a good thing right now. I think it wasn't the same back like 5 years ago, but then it is improving online too.
It's gotten so much better, like especially because now everybody's aware of that, right? And so now there's not only Tumblr, but there's like TikTok and Instagram and Twitter, and there's places where you could find your community of things you want to look. Also, one little quick note is when you're not always going to feel great in your body, especially as teenagers, because your bodies are changing and they're doing weird things, and then you get older and they're still weird and things just happen. But I've learned that to document the good days. Take a picture on the good days so you can find it on the bad days. So whenever I'm dressed up and I'm wearing like my full face of makeup, and I have my nails done and my hair done, and I'm wearing a fly outfit, and I know I look bomb, I'll take a picture, and then and I'll post it, or maybe I don't post it anywhere, but I'll keep it in my phone. And on a day that I'm not feeling very well, or I'm feeling tired, or I put on makeup and it's just not doing what it needs to do, I could post a picture of when I felt very beautiful and very powerful. And so it'll remind me on a bad day that what I'm feeling right now is only temporary, and I'm going to feel the way that I did in that picture again.
Yes, thank you so much for mentioning that point. I think teenagers have this very, stiff image that everything like success is linear, body positivity is linear. It's not going to be the same always, and we have to understand that.
Everything changes. Everything is always changing, including the way you feel about yourself and your thoughts, and the way that you move, and if you give into that and you have patience with that, it makes life so much easier.
Yes, and then moving on to the next question. One of my favorite lines from one of your interviews is that we belong here, we have always been. It is such an empowering line, and BIPOC teens often face this issue again of fitting into the boxes. that might not be created for them, and we should try to create boxes for ourselves. And what would you say about that?
Yes. I think that it's important to know that we get to choose where we belong. No one else gets to choose what we're a part of or what we're not. We live in a world that has, that has racism and has and judges people that are not as wealthy as other people, and that make us feel and think that everybody belongs into what they were born in or what was perceived to be theirs, right? But I think for you, each individual has the power to create our own world around us even if we don't have much tools. We get to choose. I am at high school. I didn't finish grade school. I'm a high school dropout. I did not go to university. I started working when I was 18 years old, and I worked like in a drugstore. I worked in a parking lot. I was a nanny. I did all kinds of jobs, right? And I didn't have the opportunity to pursue school in the way that I had dreamt of as a young girl. And I thought that meant that was all I was ever going to get to do. That was all that my work was ever going to be. Like of service in jobs that I didn't enjoy and jobs that didn't fill my heart. And so then, but I still called myself a poet, and I still wrote, and I still would go to poetry open mics or poetry slams. And I would go online and find poetry websites and share my work. And so I built a box around myself that said, I'm a poet. What I do during the day does not matter, because I'm still a poet when I come home, and I'm still a poet when I'm at work, and I'm a poet all the time. And I just kept doing what I loved and what made me feel like Jessica, not what made me feel like what the world told me that I was supposed to be. And I was blessed where everything opened up for me. I have a saying that says, I have no intentions of climbing the mountain. I want to teach the mountain how to kneel. And it's the mountain for me. It's all of the things the world expects of us, right? Like all of these institutions that are in place to make us operate in a specific way. And that's not the route I took. Like we spoke in the beginning, I'm self-taught, right? I learned everything. I would go to libraries for hours, and I would steal books from my school. Don't do that. But I used to steal books from my school, and I used to go to bookstores and spend all my money on books. And because I just loved eating up other stories. And so then when I started creating my own world through my writing, then I had people asking if they could publish me. And then I had people inviting me to be part of their larger publications. And then I had people inviting me to go speak at their universities. And I didn't even go to university. And and so then it was like this big mountain that usually tells all of us, like, no, you got to come up here. The mountain came down and said, I like what you're doing. How can I be a part of your world? And we all have the capacity to do that. We all have the capacity to build something where we're at, to make everybody come and see and say, I like what you're doing. I want to be a part of this. Like Inertia Teens was a thought that started off as a thought or something. And then look at you now.
Yes, I agree. And that is such a great story. Like, these days, what teenagers see is there is the term called privilege. Few people are quite privileged enough to get the same thing easier than you or in less time. That is the thing, but it's not the case with everyone. And with the world growing so fast paced, and everything is technology is moving fast, everything is coming online. And I think online forums, platforms really provide a lot of opportunities to those who are not that privileged, which is such an advantage in today's world. And one more thing I would like to agree is that poet is such a diverse term. Like, I can not write, but still I can call myself a poet if you feel in that way. So I think that is such a powerful term in itself. Thank you for mentioning that.
No, of course. I mean, and there's so many different kinds of poets. You know, there's spoken word poets, right? There's people that
Yes,
don't necessarily, a lot of them publish their work, but they don't necessarily do it. They get on stage and perform. That's what I do that too, you know. And then there's poets that only write on paper, and like that are only, we call them paper poets, where they only write and they don't really like, there's not much performance to what they're doing. There's poets that end up becoming rappers, because rap music is poetry with music to it, you know. And it I think a lot of us, we think of, when we think of poets, we think of like the old time poets, right? Like the poets that were writing, like Shakespeare and Edgar Allan Poe and you know, and Rumi, which, I mean, Rumi's still beautiful now, but we think that there's all these people that lived so long ago that are not here with us, right? And
yes,
we all have a little bit of poets in us.
exactly. And that is something which I would like to elaborate on, that a poet is such a diverse term. And in our textbook, all the poets are like white men writing poetry. So I don't really see myself as a poet in my textbooks. That is the thing. And all the female, I have analyzed that all the female poets in our textbook have written something very specific, and it was not taught in such a way that you go to all its potential. So we don't really see poets like us, and that is something which we should embrace about.
Yes, because you have other poets are old, white, and dead. And then you're like, how am I supposed to connect to this, right? Like, how am I supposed to relate? The first time that I saw myself as somebody that could possibly be a poet was through Black writers, right? Through Maya Angelou and Nikki Giovanni, two very powerful Black women writers. But that was like the first time that I saw somebody that wasn't a white woman or a white man sharing this work. And I think that that's really proud. Now anybody can get published, because guess what? You go into your phone and you post it on Instagram, or you post it on your blog, or you post it or you record a video of you performing it and you share it on YouTube or TikTok. Like, anywhere you could publish your work. We have the power to do that now. And I think that that is the dopest thing. Like, but in poetry, where we mentioned that they have my poem Brown Girl, they have thousands of poems that they've recorded at events, right? From people that look a million different ways. And it's so cool that we have that now. Because when I was a teenager, many years ago, I'm in my 30s now, so I'm like twice your age. But when I was a teenager, like, we didn't have that. Like, it was just what was on TV. And if it wasn't on TV, then we didn't get to see it, and then we had HBO had Def Poetry Jam, and then that kind of started like the recording of poetry and it being put on the internet and on TV. But before that, if you happen to go to an open mic, but some of us don't live near them or don't even know if there's one near us, right? Like, there's not a
Yes,
directory where you could go look it up. So it's really, really powerful that now we can just go into our phone and put in brown poet and then see a bunch of brown women come up, and
yes,
or you could get as specific as you want, like poet who wears glasses, and then like we're gonna come up, and then, or you could just like, you could easily look for whatever it is that you're looking for. And I think that that's the coolest thing, and it's what makes me the most excited.
yes, I think that is so true. And while you were talking about publishing, there are so many teenagers who write but are afraid to post that, or are doubting themselves in such adverse conditions. And what would be your advice to them to stop doubting themselves and come up and start?
That you Okay, I said this, I spoke about mirrors earlier, but at its core, poetry is the search for us. It's a mirror. It's a reflection to ourselves. And everybody comes to poetry looking for themselves. everybody. When you pick up a book, when you watch a video, when you find a post, you're trying to see if you're going to relate, if it's going to speak to you, if it's going to connect with you. The words we carry with ourselves the most is poems that relate to our lives, right? We all go to poetry looking for ourselves. So if you are being called to writing, and you're being called, like, if that's something in you that says, I need to write down my stories, then that means somebody's looking for your reflection. Somebody's looking for you. And imagine you're keeping somebody from seeing themselves in your work. You're keeping somebody from connecting with somebody else across the world, or just across the city you're in, or next door, whatever. We're looking for each other, and so lean into that. Yes, it's going to be scary to share your inner thoughts and feelings and all that. I've been doing this my whole life, and I still get scared sometimes. There's every now and then, like, if I'm going through a breakup and I wrote a poem about it, I'm like, I don't want people to know that I got my heart broken again. Or if I fall in love with somebody, I'm like, if I share this poem, they're gonna think I'm like obsessed with them, or anything like that. There's always gonna be some fear, but fear is important. If you're nervous and fearful of something, that means that it means a lot to you, and that means that you want to protect it. And so that's beautiful, and allow yourself to feel that. But then you take that a step further, and you say, I'm scared, but I'm going to share it anyway. And that's when courage happens, when you still do something even if you're scared. And that lets other people, and then you're going to be surprised with the people that rise to your to your own courage, and how you connect. Like, I remember I used to have a poem about, I'm a fat woman, and I used to write about how I was really struggling to love my fat body. It was when I was starting therapy and a lot of that journey. And I performed the poem at an open mic, and I thought no one was gonna relate with it, because I talked about having an eating disorder and being ashamed of it, and being ashamed of my body, but really wanting to love it. And because we think we're so alone, and we think we're the only ones feeling what we're feeling. So I go to this, I'm at this open mic, I perform it, I finish the poem, standing ovation. And it wasn't a great performance of it. So it wasn't that's what they was, the standing ovation. The standing ovation was that everyone in that room, or almost everybody in that room, had felt something I spoke about at that point, and had never felt that they would say it out loud, and had never heard somebody else say it out loud. And because this was really early on in the body positivity movement was really starting to happen. And what gift that was, not only to whoever was in the audience, but to me, who I thought that nobody could feel the way that I did. And nobody had experienced the shame and hurt that I had. And then now I see a room full of people standing. Like, I went home that day and I was just like, it's going to be okay. Because if these people felt that way, and I never even knew, then I'm going to be okay. And that was the best gift I've ever given myself. And I want everybody to be able to give themselves that gift.
Yes, that is so powerful that it literally gives me chills. The power of writing and how words influence everything around you. I have been to a couple of open mics, and first I had this thought that I am a teenager. What will I change in this world? I can't make an impact. But then I think this year only, January, I started open mics, and the first time I performed, everyone was so impressed, and that gave me so much of, power to perform and be myself. And if people are liking myself, like, listening to the poems when I was most vulnerable, then imagine your power when you're yourself.
Mm-hmm. And that is the best thing. I have a lot of poet friends, and we joke that we meet each other inside out, because when you meet someone through their poems, you know all of their fears and their vulnerabilities and joys and all of that, and then you get to know the other part, like then you get to know their favorite TV show or whatever, right? And I think that's beautiful. I think it's beautiful to get to know each other inside out, and especially because it's been the first time in any of our lifetimes that globally we've all gone through something difficult, right? That the entire world went through the pandemic, or we're still going through it. And so almost every person in every country has felt some of the fear that we've all felt, and has felt some of the loneliness and some of the loss that we've all experienced. And imagine how many people are out there searching for someone to reflect that back to them, you know. And during the pandemic, when we were all inside our houses, imagine if we didn't have other people willing to share their stories. We would have been so alone and so bored and so bored and so lonely. And so if anything, this last couple of years have taught us that it is important for us to remember that everything is about the human connection, and about like how your story connects to mine, and how your story will connect to another young person, and that person can inspire an adult, because teens be inspiring adults. Y'all are braver than any of us, and y'all are determined. And especially, like, I feel like your generation and the generations after you just get more and more powerful, and it's so exciting to watch it happen. And so please remind us, the rest of us in the world that get very comfortable and very stuck, remind us what the important things are, and that there's people that still want to feel all of those connections.
It's our pleasure inspiring you all, because that is not something that I thought before, but now I'll definitely think about it. So moving on to a serious question, which is once when I saw your Instagram post dealing with inappropriate DMs you had received, honestly, I was so astonished, because someone was finally talking about it. Like, women, and especially BIPOC women, go through this so much, and it's just so much normalized on the internet that I did not find anyone who is talking about it openly. And you know, first of all, BIPOC women work like twice as hard, and then later on they have to deal with such comments. And I am so proud of you for talking about it, because that is not something that we see happening, and teens know that this is something that happens, but we don't know what to do about it. So what would be your tip for someone who faces this and does not know how to deal with it?
Yes, and for those of you that are not familiar with my Instagram, I post screenshots of DMs I get throughout the whole internet, right? Whether it's on my Instagram account, or because I'm older, I'm on the dating apps. You can't be on the dating apps till you're adults, but I'm on the dating apps, and like I'm looking, like, you know, like I don't know if I want to like settle down, but I'm open to meeting somebody, right? And the dating apps are wild. You get men that sent really sexual advances, harassment, in my Instagram DMs also. And Instagram is my place of business. It's where I do my work. So I'm like, why are you harassing me here if there's not anything? Well, no one should harass you anywhere. But that's the thing. That's the thing that I think the most powerful thing I learned when it came to that was that none of that is my fault. None of that is my fault, because nobody should be sending anybody those types of messages. And when I was starting to interact, when my following was growing online, and I started sharing those posts, people would be like, well, what are you wearing in these pictures? What pictures are you posting for you to get these messages? And at first I used to feel like, what am I doing that's attracting this attention? And then I realized, no, this is what misogyny is. It's men thinking they have access to women's bodies, especially Black and brown and indigenous women. They think they have access to our bodies just because we exist, right? And they tend to over-sexualize us and tend to objectify us and all of that. And so I think me learning and understanding, like really understanding that nobody deserves that. Then also I started sharing the screenshots for 3 different reasons. One, I wanted women to realize that no matter how respectable you're perceived to be, you will still receive harassment. and it's okay. It's not your fault, right? Two, I want other men to see what men do when men are not watching, because you might be a quote unquote nice guy or respectful and not do those kinds of things, and you might say, well, my friends don't do that either. And my thing is, you don't know what your friends do when they're by themselves at home, when nobody else is watching. And so it's important to share that. And then three, as a fat woman of color get more sexualized than anybody else, because we're not looked at we're not perceived to be people. And so and this is important of the world, not of people not seeing us in the world, because then they think we're not real people. And so then they can tell us whatever it is that they want to tell us, because they're not offending somebody that's a real person, you know. And so I say things back to them, and I make fun of them, and I post them on my social media. But I would say that you don't owe anyone anything. You could block them. If you're feeling spicy, if you're feeling feisty, you could tell them that they're gross and to leave you alone. You could argue back to them, but no matter how much harassment you get, no matter how many people approach you like that you don't like, just know that it's never your fault, and just block them and let them go on and with their lives anywhere else that they want. That's the most important thing. And unfortunately, we live in a world where that's normalized, but I think that the more attention we bring to it, the more the conversation will shift, you know. And the sexual harassment, it's the equivalent to catcalling, but it just happens on the internet. So if it makes you feel uncomfortable, you're supposed to feel that. Don't gaslight yourself to tell yourself that it's not a big deal, you know, and do whatever it is that you need to do to make yourself feel safe and better.
Yes, and thank you so much for talking about it, because not a lot of people do this, and especially with minors, I think if it is a red flag, go block them, say no, and if they don't, then do anything to protect your safety. And you know, these social media apps don't really do anything about reporting.
Yeah.
And even after telling them that you are minor, and just don't one more thing, yeah, like you said, just don't blame it on yourself, because everything is so new at that time. You really feel it's all your fault, but then it is not. And thank you so much again for talking about it, like talking about it on platforms like this one. Like people don't really think it is a teen issue, but it is, and we should start talking about it a lot more than we do.
Yeah, I think that the biggest mistake that adults do is think that teenagers don't deal with sexual harassment. And I feel like you're targeted more than a lot of other people, because you're perceived to be a vulnerable demographic, right? Like, yes. Oh, this is a young girl, she's not going to know how to take care of herself, so I could harass her as much as I want. But I think that the best thing that we can all do is give you the tools to be able to protect yourself, and tell you off bat, it's never your fault. It is never your fault. Anybody crossing a boundary in any kind of way towards you, it is never your fault. And once you understand that, and you know that the other person is the one in the wrong, it gives you the power to be able to take that back, you know, and to be able to close that door and block them, report them, make your page go private if it becomes too much, and also make a big deal about it if you want to. If you feel that you need to rise and make noise and all of that, don't let anyone make you feel that you don't have the right to do that, because nobody should be experiencing those things. And so I get that a lot. I get women my age that are like, well, just don't be on the dating apps. I should be allowed to be on a dating app. I should be allowed to exist anywhere that I want to without being harassed. And I'm not going to change my behavior just because some people don't know how to be respectful. And so yes, as teenagers, I think it's important for y'all to also make the folks around you listen. If you're having a hard time with something and it's out of, and you feel that it's become too much for you to handle, make your parents listen to you. Make a teacher, make somebody older than you that you trust, or confide in your friends. There's power in numbers, and if y'all unify, you can always make somebody listen when it's more than one of you. And so you're extremely powerful, and don't let anybody make you feel otherwise.
Yes, exactly. So moving on to the Teen Talks question of the day, which is, if you could say anything to your younger self related to any myth related to mental health, what would you say and why?
I would tell young Jessica, you are not the only one. I was diagnosed with bipolar disorder when I was in high school, and my teenage hormones were already all over the place. And I remember most of my teen years feeling like, not to use the word in a bad way, but I felt like I was crazy. Like I felt like I was crazy, and that there was something very wrong with me, and that no one would ever be able to like put up with me for a long time or love me, and that I was never going to be fixed, or I was broken, right? And I think if I would have known what exactly being bipolar is, having bipolar disorder, if I would have known that there's a lot of people with that in the world, there's even famous people with that in the world, I would have been a lot more patient with myself. If I would have known that anxiety is something that a lot of people in this world experience, I wouldn't have felt like something was broken inside of me. I know that this isn't to minimize anything that anyone's going through, but I guarantee whatever it is, you are not the only one. And so now that we have this powerful tool called the internet, we can look for other people that are going through the same things that we are. And even if just reading about them allows us to be able to be there for each other, or to at least have some kind of hope. So I would tell young Jessica, you're not alone, and you are not, and also you're not your own worst enemy. Like you are the only person you're gonna have your entire life, from beginning to end. Our parents, sadly, most of them pass away before we do, right? Because we outlive them. Our siblings will get married or build families and go off on their own ways. Some friends are just your childhood friends, and then they're not your friends. Trust me, you're gonna lose and gain friends through your whole life, right? And so people come into your life for periods of times and then they leave. But the constant person that's always there is you. So learn to be patient with yourself, learn to love yourself. And I don't mean like love like where you never feel like, sometimes love is being hard on yourself, right? Sometimes love is being like, you know what, you're overreacting and you need to calm down. Or you need to get up and go take a shower because you haven't showered in 5 days because you were depressed, and you're going to feel a lot better after you shower and you eat a good meal, and learn to be your own friend and learn what you need from yourself. Like I treat myself like if I'm another person. Do you know what I mean? Where I'm just like, all right, Jessica, what's going on with you? What are you feeling? Let's check in. Let's take inventory. All right, you need to go for a walk. Cool. Cancel plans. Let's take you for a walk. Last week I took myself away for a week because I was having a hard time focusing on work. And so I went to go spend a time alone with myself and get some writing done, just be your own best friend, keep your own company, and don't be hard on yourself, and don't compare yourself to other people. Don't. If you're not looking at other people to connect with them, but to compare yourself to them, it's not gonna work. And then just have patience. Everything passes. And that's it.
Yes, thank you so much for summarizing everything. And like you had said, make your own self your best friend. I think when everyone is like turning into teenage, like pre-teenage or teenage also, people really like being around friends and that circle of friends or something like that. So they fall into this thing that I can't live without my best friend. I've heard that so many times. That is something you shouldn't lose yourself in the process. That is
Yeah.
something. Thank you so
When I
much
was
for talking about
Yes,
it.
when I was 16, I think, 17, my best friend used to live next door to me, and they were moving. They were moving 5 minutes away, but they were moving. They were no longer going to be next door. And I found my journal like when I was older, and I was just like, my world is ending. She's not going to be here anymore. What am I going to do now? And we're still friends now. We're both 37. She's married and has a kid. I work, I chore, and we're still friends, and it's still work. But I think at that age we just like get so wrapped up in our friends, and it's okay.
Yes.
It's beautiful to love our friends that much, but life is very long, and we can't depend on another person to keep us happy. We have to do it for ourselves.
Yes, I agree. And like you had said, my world is ending. That is the case with so many teens I know. And they can be like, I can't live a day without my best friend, something like that. But then you are the last, like you said, from the beginning to the end, you and your body has been through hell with you. So it's going to be there for you. So,
Yes.
lastly, what would you like to say to our audience and about inertia teens? And yeah.
I want to tell everybody about inertia teens and just teens in general that this is it. Like, it doesn't get any realer, any more beautiful than the young people that, I think the older that we all get, the more they realize that young folks are the ones that like are know what direction and what we should all be doing, because y'all are the ones that like take away privileges from everybody, and the least privileges you have, the more you need to be heard and amplified, right? And teenagers don't have rights yet because you're not adults, so you need to be amplified, because you can't vote in most countries, you can't do many other things, but you have powerful voices that create phenomenal change. I mean, look at a lot of these young activists that there are in the world, and so for other teens, I want you to know that you are powerful, and I love that you demand to be heard. And for those of us older folks, I think that we do a disservice to our youth when we don't listen to them, and we don't give their voices the respect that they deserve. And we get old and we get jaded, and we get used to things, and some of us get bitter and some of us get all these things, but like young folks still haven't gone through that and still haven't dealt with all the bumps and lumps of the world, and I feel that there's something really refreshing and beautiful in that. And I love the fact that Inertia Teens is celebrating that, and it's also bringing mirrors to young folks that are like, look, here are people where we could see ourselves in the world, and things that we can aspire to. And so I love the fact that there's something that's beautiful happening, and thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for coming. This is one of the most exciting and amazing episode I had. And this is a mirror to so many people out there who is listening to this. And thank you so much.
No, thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure, and I gladly will come back whenever you have me. And this is really beautiful, and I hope you continue thriving and having even more amazing guests that get you even more excited. And I'll be rooting for you on my side of the world.